First, we remove the existing grab handles on the KTM 690 by using a T40 Torx bit. Loosen all the screws and then remove the handles. Save the hardware because it's the same length of hardware that's going to be used for the new rack. So if you to lose a screw or damage a screw, you could use one of your existing KTM screws. We're going to take the standoffs and set them into the position on the rear of the motorcycle. Then the next step is we will position the top Burro rack over the standoffs and drop the screws into position, aligning the top Burro rack and the standoffs. At this point we won't tighten any screws. We're just going to set them in position. So we're going to remove the passenger foot peg from the left side of the bike. We're going to take the M8 by 12 millimeter screw, place it in the lower hole of the Gila rack, and then install it 2 or 3 threads into the motorcycle. We'll get the next screw ready and we'll lift the rack into position and loosely install the upper screw, leaving everything with plenty of motion. At this point, we'll rotate the rack into position, pull the hardware that we just placed in position through the Burro rack, and then swing the rack into position and simply place the hardware into the holes. And that will be that step. So we'll install a screw in the lower side of the fuel tank. Screw it in a couple of threads just to hold it in position, but leaving it loose for freedom of movement. Then we'll lift it up into position, install the second screw, again loosely, to hold it in position. We'll go to the top like we did before. We'll pull the screws we put in earlier, lift the Burro rack, and slip the fuel tank rack into position, and drop our screws through the hole. At this point, we'll go in and push down on the screws, pushing them into the fuel tank, and then feel for engagement of the threads, ensuring that there's no cross threading of the screws. We'll do it one side and then we'll go across to the opposite side, checking for engagement of the threads, ensuring that there's no cross threading. Push the screws down, feeling for engagement. Push the screws down, tighten. Once you have them all tight, and you pull on them to make sure they're engaged, go back and tighten the screws to 13.8 inch-pounds. Don't put too much force on them because the inserts are in the plastic tank. Over-torquing could damage the inserts in the tank. Tighten your foot stands next. Again to 14-inch pounds. We'll do the right side of the bike. Foot pegs. So at this point we're going to take the fuel line that came on your tank and attach it to the fuel adapter that you've installed in your previous step. And we're going to route the fuel line along the tubes from the frame so that it won't get abraded as you drive. Simply put it in and tighten the hose clamp. So next we'll install the rear cross brace. This cross brace allows the forces, when applied to either side of the bike, to be transmitted to the other side so that you have both sides supporting any loads. So you'll notice when you're installing the cross brace, the long side goes towards the muffler side of the bike and the short side goes towards the fuel tank. So you'll take your screw and place it through the existing hole in the plastic license plate bracket on the back of the motorcycle and install your hardware. Alright, so don't cut this. So you'll notice that the black straps are up in the up direction versus a down direction because there's more clearance in the muffler bracket. In the license plate bracket. So we had one screw in, we'll put the other one in. After the two rear brackets are installed loosely, then we'll swing it into position, aligning the holes on the motorcycle and install the hardware. So then we'll install a second screw. So here's the fuel valve for the auxiliary tank, and normally I run with it off in the off position, which is in this position now. And then when my fuel light goes, my low fuel warning light goes on the dash, I flip the tank on. And when I do that, I know that I have approximately the same range to return as what I wish to use a rotor pack for either water or fuel. The mounting holes have been provided in the side rack to match the 4 holes in the rotor pack lock. On the side rack, and if you want to carry additional water or fuel, there's 4 holes in the top rack that also match the rotor pack's mount. We'll normally use a KTM tail trunk and have this rack currently on their bike. We've put holes in the rear bracket so that you can install the horseshoe bracket onto the Burro rack and still use your rear trunk.